Hi, I'm Ed Hewitt. I'm Respira's Director of Nature-Based Solutions. I joined Respira last year from the Nature Conservancy, which is the world's largest conservation organisation, where I led their forest carbon programme in Africa. So what is a voluntary carbon credit? Well, the first thing to bear in mind is that it represents 1 tonne of CO2 which has been avoided or sequestered from the atmosphere. So we call this a verified emission reduction. And to verify it, it relies on third-party certification bodies such as Verra or Gold Standard. And then on top of that, Respira does our own due diligence to make sure that each credit has the utmost integrity from a carbon perspective, but also from a social and environmental perspective. There's 2 main types of carbon credit. There's avoidance tonnes and there's removal tonnes. Avoidance tonnes are the most common type of carbon credit. And these are things like renewable energy, cook stoves, or forest conservation, where you've avoided forest from being cut down that is at threat. And these stop a further tonne of CO2 from being released into the atmosphere. Then there's removal tonnes. Now these remove a tonne of CO2 from the atmosphere and store it either biologically in trees or in soils, or geologically in rock formations. And again, here it's the biological credits which dominate in the market. At Respira, we primarily focus on what we call nature-based solutions. So these are carbon credits that protect, restore, or better manage forests, soils, and wetlands. We focus on these for a few reasons. Firstly is the scale. There was a report done a few years ago by the organisation that I used to work for, the Nature Conservancy, which showed that the potential from nature-based solutions is actually much larger than had previously been anticipated. Nature can deliver about 1/3 of the emissions reductions that we need between now and 2030 to get onto a 1.5 degree pathway. The nature-based solutions are available right now. We don't need any new technology to be invented to enable them. And they can be delivered at substantially lower cost than many technological solutions. It's also really important to stress the incredible co-benefits that come with these nature-based solutions, particularly for biodiversity and for local livelihoods in the global south. Just in the Respira portfolio alone, the projects that we have invested in to date are responsible for restoring or conserving almost 4 million hectares of land, which contain over 30 high conservation value threatened species, and also impacting the lives of over 10 million people. How the carbon credits are used is then really important to avoid accusations of greenwashing. The most important thing to bear in mind is that carbon credits should not be used as an excuse to divert the attention away from reducing one's own emissions first. So whoever ultimately retires the carbon credits, that could be corporations, could be countries, could be individuals, needs to make sure that they are reducing their own emissions as the first thing, and then using the carbon credits to compensate for any emissions that can't be reduced. So the use of carbon credits is part of a strategy, an integrated strategy on the pathway towards net zero. At Respira, we're really proud to have built a great portfolio of nature-based projects. The projects span forest, soil, and blue carbon. So in the forest sector, we're really proud to be supporting award-winning community conservation forest protection projects in Tanzania. From a blue carbon perspective, we're investing in the world's largest blue carbon project, which is a mangrove restoration project. So that's restoring over 200,000 hectares of degraded mangrove land in Pakistan. From a soil carbon perspective, we're also investing in the world's largest soil carbon project. And that's in northern Kenya in participation with local community-led conservancies. So that's an integrated biodiversity and carbon project, which is removing carbon from the atmosphere through restoring the soil as the cattle graze around in a rotational manner, and that enables the soil to be restored and remove that carbon from the atmosphere. So I'm personally a real convert to carbon markets as a way to fund nature-based solutions. I spent the last 5 years in Kenya, and during that time, it was my job to find ways to bring private finance to conservation and restoration projects. And we always found this so difficult, especially when the fundamental ecosystem service that was being provided, in this case, storing carbon, wasn't being valued. Now, the carbon markets completely changed that. If you sequester carbon, or if you avoid carbon, you get paid for it. So it's a direct link to a results-based mechanism, which is then linked on to capital markets. Personally, I find it really empowering to link up these fantastic projects that conserve or restore nature and connect these brilliant projects with large-scale capital investment. And it's the voluntary carbon market that enables that.